All right, we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I've had the pleasure of chatting with our guest speaker offline and online, so I'm excited to see what they're going to share with us today. But before we get started, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping guidelines so that we can all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. So, of course, lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you're deciding to be with us here. If you're here live, we appreciate you. Even if you're rewatching this, we appreciate you as well. So if you're here live with us, we'd love for you to participate, and you can participate in a number of ways. You can turn on your cameras if you feel called to do so, but no shame, no pressure if you don't feel like doing that. I know that video fatigue is real, but we would like to see your beautiful faces if you feel called to do so. And I know some of you might need that extra invitation to do that. So join me on camera if you want. We'd love to see your, good. I see some people coming on camera. Cool. If not, all good. Please participate in the chat. Otherwise, you can write any questions that come to mind, any reflections, any of your own tips and tricks as well that come to mind during this conversation. You all have submitted some great questions previous to this live conversation. So we are going to go through those questions before the hour is up. But maybe some questions come to mind in the moment, or you want to share some of your own, resources or personal tips and tricks as well. So again, feel free to use the chat box throughout this hour. And if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can write to me or Taylor privately in the chat box. Probably write to me because Taylor will be presenting, and I want to make sure that they can be focused on their presentation. So find me in the chat under Mariella Marie, write to me privately, and I'll make sure to keep you anonymous and raise your question or your reflection in this hour. Now, if anyone would like to hop off mute during this conversation, please, write to me either privately or publicly in the chat. You can also raise your emoji hand, giving me a cue. And as time allows, I'll give you the permission to hop off of mute. If you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And everyone who signed up for this conversation with Power to Fly, be looking out for a rewatch email. That email will include a link to this recorded video for you to rewatch, take notes, share with your community, your colleagues, your family. And also it will include any links to resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour. So be looking out for that rewatch email. And the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to Power to Fly's YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And if I see a lot of new names, I see some familiar names as well who are joining, but I see some new names. So if this is the first time you're joining a conversation where I'm moderating, I'll just take a couple seconds to introduce myself. So I'm Mariella Marie, calling from Patagonia in Argentina, the original lands of the Mapuche people. And I love bringing my reflections to the importance of deepening our emotional intelligence in this ever-changing work sphere that we are, trying to make more inclusive, more diverse, more, create more sense of belonging. So I might try to bring some of my reflections to that note. If anyone is interested in philosophizing on emotional intelligence or sharing any actionable tips on how we can deepen our emotional intelligence practice, please feel free to do so live with me now, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can support the project that I'm working on the Positive Force team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. I'm also producing a podcast for Grow Dialogue with some interesting topics around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as well. So feel free to reach out to me if you don't get a chance to write to me in the chat, and I would love to connect with you all. All right, so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Taylor, who has so much knowledge to share with us in this hour. I know that they've presented before. Maybe you all have heard them speak or heard them, just share their tips and tricks. But today we're going to use this hour to really dive deep into, one of my favorite topics. So if anyone, has any questions that come to mind that you weren't able to submit to Power to Fly before, again, please use the chat box. But Taylor, we'd love to learn a little bit about yourself for those who've not heard you speak yet. So let us know about yourself and why you are passionate about this topic that you're going to share with us today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mariella. It is an absolute pleasure. And hello, everyone. This is amazing. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Taylor Bikowski. My pronouns are my name and they, them. I work at Red Hat, an open source technology company. I am the global events DEI strategy manager, focusing on including DEI initiatives embedded into the event lifecycle. And I'm also the global co-chair of the Neurodiversity and mental health community. This all wraps up into why I find everything around making mistakes, rumination, public speaking jitters, and performance anxiety so important because this is how we are communicating to each other, specifically now in the pandemic, virtually. So I am very excited to go through my own personal experience and understanding about the differences between public speaking jitters. I'm doing it right now. I'm shaky. I'm nervous. No joke. I literally was just still making edits to this presentation. That is the life we live in. But I'm excited to get into it.
Awesome. I love your transparency just from the jump. And, thank you just for kicking us off and helping set the stage there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I know that you've got a beautiful presentation to walk us through, Taylor. So go ahead and start to share your screen, and I'll be hanging out in the chat for, folks who want to, dig deeper into some of the things that Taylor might be presenting here. And again, if anyone has any sensitive information, please write to me privately so that Taylor can focus on their presentation, and I will make sure that we raise those reflections or questions as we have time. So Taylor, take it away.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So getting into this, navigating public speaking jitters, performance anxiety, and rumination. Before we get going here, just a little bit of a decorum, which just fantastic word itself. To let you know that trigger warning of what could be talked about. There are going to be even triggering tips within the presentation. That personal lived experience is a type of expertise, but I am not a certified or licensed therapist. And the tools that I'm going to be talking about are 100% what works for me. They are, if you will, tailor-made. The language that we all speak, even if we are speaking the same language, is completely different, especially what is inside your head. So what I am also saying, what I also have, that is how I speak to myself. This also all took place over a dedicated couple years and focus, as well as listening to podcasts, reading different articles, being really into understanding meditation and mindfulness, etc. And the biggest point of all is to give yourself grace and others to actually mess up. And before we get into the presentation, if you will, since I just finished it, I like to start with this with some meditations, mindful breaths, just to get us here slowed down. You are more than welcome to just hang out and zone out. I welcome and encourage to close out any other of the tabs. We do multitask sometimes well, but to definitely take this opportunity to be here with us now to really focus in. So just quickly, you can keep your eyes open or closed. You're going to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. We're going to do it 3 times. And the intention is just to actually try to focus on the breath as opposed to what you are going to have for lunch or already had for lunch or having for dinner. And I'm going to do it alongside with you because I could use a little calm down myself. All right. So in through your nose. Hold out through your mouth. Feel your shoulders drop, feel everything melt down. In through your nose. Hold at the top. Out through your mouth. And let's just do one more, guided on own. Thank you so much. That is very needed. So today we are going to go look at some different tips on feeling more comfortable about speaking publicly, how to navigate performance anxiety, and to embrace mistakes and still move forward and not get caught in that rumination negative spiral. First, I always like to define, getting us everyone on the same page. Jitters are the feelings of extreme nervousness. So you got your body sweating, shortness of breath, increased heart rate, trembling. Performance anxiety, or you might have heard it as stage fright. That is when you're experiencing it for a public speaking in front of an audience. You'll tend to have some dry mouth, like I am definitely experiencing now, some tight throat, that uneasy feeling. What triggers is your survival mode, that fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. It's very similar to that survival mode. And it's quite intense for your nervous system before, during, and after. Rumination, that is when it's a deep considering thought. I like to say it like when for this presentation, for example, my brain launches some explorers that start filtering through the experiences, start going through those filing cabinets, kind of like how a sports team watches that game roll to improve. But instead of trying to find what I can improve, they're going and bookmarking it and putting it in a filing cabinet, or going like, Willy Wonka, I've got the golden ticket. Focus on this now. This is the only thing you're going to be able to focus on. Then we have the peanut gallery of all the parts, the analytical, critical, shame, guilt, embarrassment. They come out and they're shouting at me, trying to say, hey, remember, you're going to feel like this when you're about to speak. I don't know if you've ever watched the Say Yes to the Bridesmaid's Dress, but we have some very vocal family members, and that's how I feel like my parts are a lot of the time. So mistakes or messing up. I usually, I've now updated my language. I actually don't use the word mistake anymore. I very much say learning opportunity, because it is. A mistake is only a mistake if you don't learn and move forward with it. Also, making them are guaranteed. Absolutely. In all aspects of life. I fail and make mistakes constantly. You cannot avoid them. But what you can do is change your relationship with them so that it's more, you have the ability to take it in as opposed to being affected by it. Now, this is really hard to just completely shift off. It may sound really simple, but it's quite complicated. Why? Because of those survival instincts. Your body is reminding you that you may not feel or be in a safe space, even if you are just sitting in front of your computer. Perfectionism and people pleasing, with the combination of those trauma traits, the environment that we all live in and society, they don't encourage mistakes as opportunities. And your previous employers or families don't foster how to learn and model how to actually make them as opportunities. And Nessa had this great question of, if you notice that you've misquoted or mistaken a talking point, are there tips on how to pivot? Well, first off on that, I just want to say, noticing or in the moment, or even during a little bit after, that's great. Great job for recognizing that. When it comes to the thought of losing credibility, I'd say if you're able to recognize it, that being able to say and correct yourself, I actually believe shows more of a vulnerability, and that you're being brave enough to admit that you were originally mistaken, but you care about giving the accurate information. I was thinking through this and I said, I think you could go, an update or correction on that quote or content about X I mentioned earlier. Actually, this is it. So it's really just, what is it? What happened? What was said? Updating it and continuing to move forward. And what mistakes should we avoid when starting our career in speaking publicly? Also a good question. My first immediate response to reading this was none, with make all the mistakes. There are caveats, of course, but I would say the biggest part of that is to not be mean or a bully to yourself, not being hard on yourself for making those mistakes. Because as soon as you are hard on yourself, that leads into the rumination, where it's that negative thought spiral, and you're going to be bookmarking that memory with the other experiences like that. And it's just going to continue to grow and get more embedded in your head and harder to change out. I like to think about listening. So you may have a couple thought streams happening anytime, like I have right now, as I didn't immediately practice this word for word because I wanted to try to be a bit more open. And I don't know if you have ever experienced this, but when you are in your car listening to music and you've got your navigation going, you're trying to find your location. Well, when you're getting closer to your location, do you tend to turn down the music to hear the directions better? And really what that is you're changing and shifting. Yes, I love you're changing and shifting the focus from hearing focus on the music and shifting it to hearing or understanding the direction. Sometimes I need to turn it completely off. Well, that's very much with rumination and making a mistake. You're going to have still other thoughts in your background. Your focus, your music is that mistake. But what's needing to happen is for you to turn down the amount of control that thought is having and focus on something else. A therapist once told me it was really good, like literally changing the Netflix channel. If you're watching a horror film and that ends and you're scared, well, if you just turn off the movie and the Netflix, you're still going to be thinking about the horror film and you're still going to be scared. You literally have to change to, say, a comedian, to change your focus and put it on something else. I like also, it's like jamming the system, because a lot of times what we ruminate on, because we've been thinking about it for so long, you really like a computer system when you have too many tabs open. Start opening a whole bunch of tabs, get ready to clear them. But it's all, the goal here is you're shifting your focus from the actual, what you would classify as a mistake. All right, give me some Y's or N's in the chat. Have you ever played or know of the game Sims? Super curious, and no worries if not. Let's see what we have. So I very much loved The Sims, and if this unlocked a childhood memory for you, you're welcome. More importantly, with The Sims, what I really liked is I always pictured my life to being a Sims character. And more specifically, what's showing here are the experience skills meters that come with The Sims. You learn cooking by actually cooking it or reading a book on it, and you'll start leveling up. That is how I viewed my life as a child, that I wanted to just max out all my skills. But here's where the game doesn't account for: neuron wiring, human experience, and societal conditioning. Now, so I don't know if you've heard of synaptic pruning, but what that means are neurons that fire together, wire together. For example, public speaking and anxiety symptoms. Because you've compared and had many experiences speaking and having these anxiety symptoms, that is what that neuron shows. That's what's connected. When, in order to learn a new skill or improve upon it, half of the job is actually learning about it. But that's not the full picture. You also have to release the limiting belief that is connected to it. For example, I know I love to do this. I want to do this professionally forever. This gives me so much joy. That doesn't take away the amount of anxiety symptoms that I've had leading up to this, including right now. We're feeling it because my body is just reacting how it would. So although I've been practicing public speaking and I'm getting better at it, I still am feeling these huge nervousness and the tight chest and freaking out about the perfectionism of the fact that this presentation is not as perfect as I want it. So what needs to happen is a mindset shift. It's practicing public speaking, but it's also pairing it with positive thoughts and changing and morphing that nervousness into excitement. I don't know if that's ever going to go away, to be nervous. I really see being nervous as you want to do a great job and you're excited, but we're just so tapped into feeling that is more of the anxiety symptoms. All right. Sledding. Give me another Y or N in the chat. Have you ever gone sledding before? Also, no judgment or shame if you haven't. You're understanding the concept. And what's showing here in these images are different snow scenes where different levels of paths from a sled. I see brain wiring very much like sledding paths. The more you sled down the same path, the deeper ingrained it's going to be. The walls are going to start coming up and it's going to go faster. That first image like that, as soon as you put your sled down on that path, you're staying on that path and you're going to go down really, really quickly. It's going to get icy over as well. So in order to create a new habit, you have to continue putting down your sled, but actually directing it off of the path. And that's going to take time. It's going to take effort. Question for you in the chat. On average, how many days do you think it takes for a new behavior to become automatic? And I actually don't know how to look at chat. There it is.
We got 20, 21s, 28,
Thank
10.
you. You mean the button that says chat? That's fine.
I got you. I'm with you, Taylor.
Technology. All right, amazing. Yes. So actually, on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. But really, it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 to form that new habit. That 21, the number that a lot of you put in, it's not incorrect. But why that it actually came from a surgeon, an author of the 1960s Psychic Cybernetics. This surgeon was seeing time and time again that phantom limbs started, that the sensation started going away after 21 days. And he started noticing a pattern that also was what he was noticing. So he put on, it's anywhere from 18 to 254. As we know what happens with media, it caught wind, it was 21 days and that's it. And yes, Tori, that is super daunting. My goodness, because these are lifestyles. This is a new habit to actually be a habit. It's got to feel natural and not as much thought process into it. Kind of like breathing and brushing our teeth, combing our hair. Those are actions and things that we do automatically. And that's what it is to change that pattern. All right. Some of these changing patterns for me. I have to ask myself, I like this, right? Like I like doing this. I'm choosing voluntarily to be vulnerable, put myself out there and speak in front of people that I can really only see, as we are mostly all virtual right now. So I do have to remind myself that I like it, including for this presentation a couple of days ago. It was starting to become really overwhelming for me. I experience ADHD symptoms. And what happens with that is when I can recognize when a task requires sustained mental energy, even if it's something that I like, it still becomes overwhelming. And I generally experience mental paralysis. I also get that very fun feeling of imposter syndrome, which, let's talk about mistakes, spelling error. Feeling that and seeing that normally, we don't say normally. No. In the past, I would probably ruminate amazing time on this. Like, oh my goodness, I had a misspelled word in this presentation. Goodness gracious. But at the end of the day, that's really not the big point here. And I recognize it, I see it, and we're going to move forward. I have what also is that fear chatter. It's the sadness from that Emotions movie, just always in there trying to find that negative situation. The ones that came up for me, presenting incorrect information. The person's name was going to go in there that also brought that up. Yes, that is huge. That it's too much information and that I won't remember to give it all, that no one will show up or even care. So I go into also reminders of myself. A couple times I just had to say, done is better than perfect. What is actually important? Is it the way it looks Or is it the content getting on there so that I am prepared enough to speak to it? When I feel confident in my ability to communicate about my experience, that is the possibility for me to articulate. So it's really down to it. It's understanding and knowing the content. I used to very much remember and memorize every single piece of the presentation. I had to, in order for me to feel like I could keep my anxiety low. Because gosh, if you don't know exactly what you're going to say, what are you going to say? And how are you going to stay on stream? Wonderful questions on that. Public speaking at the end of the day is a skill set. Just like the Sims skill meter, you have to practice. Practice makes progress. I've updated that saying. It is not practice makes perfection, because that is not a real concept. Practice makes progress. It's doing it and doing it and doing it again. And it's also working on those neurons and your mental positivity. So these are just some examples that came up for me for reminding me, yes, I do like this. I do like communicating to people. I like making presentations. This brings me joy. It's really just finding the truth. And when it's not fully believable yet, because it is a process, it's finding those micro steps to get to, all right, I want to be able to present very confidently with less or with more ease and less anxiety. Well, that's like saying tomorrow I'm going to be a millionaire. That's actually going to hurt you more than help you. But if you want to become a millionaire, what are those steps that you can get to? Just like public speaking. Some call outs. I will also say, I would never put this much copy on a slide and talk to it. It's giving me hella anxiety as well. And that's what happens when the brain does what it does. So biggest call outs here, like I said, these micro steps. I see and process everything in steps. I need the deadlines and to cheerlead myself. Something that I found that I was doing last night was I was actually smiling while I was creating the presentation. That was giving me good energy that I knew no matter what happened and put on here, I was going to like what I talked about. It's experience the successes without moving forward too quickly and tracking those successes. The ego likes to move on very quickly after any successes. It's great. You've done it. On to the next. But survival brain, they like to hold on to those negative experiences. It's like in the cave people days where the gatherers went out and tried to find some berries on a berry bush. Well, they found this one bush that was red, bright red berries, and ate it, and somebody got sick, maybe even died. On another hunt out for berries, they see, well, they don't see the berries are red, but the leaves look just like the other one. They'll probably stay away from that bush knowing that something similar caused sickness or death. That is why our survival brains are so strong. They're so incredible. It's just trying to keep us safe. And I think a lot of times we don't really put together that because we're not fighting a panther, a lion, that we're talking to people. Well, how could those two be similar? But they are, because the body doesn't know any differently. A big thing coming from Tony Robbins, that was actually one of my first presentation with Power to Fly. The night before, I was freaking out. And I literally Googled how to get confidence overnight. And the podcast thankfully found the perfect one, and I have it linked in this deck. But he gave a lot of examples on what that actually means to speak and be confident. And as I'm talking, I'm even pulling my shoulders back because I know that's more, it's going to help me feel like I actually know what the heck I'm talking about here. I have examples. I don't know if this is triggering for anyone, but that when you're in the classroom, growing up in school and you had to do bump reading, I If that gave you tightening in the chest, I do apologize. Why that was so difficult is words were really difficult for me, especially reading in general, growing up, but specifically pronouncing words. And when you're reading in front of a whole classroom and you have to literally slow down the actual pace to sound out a word, or you're thinking, am I talking too slow or fast? Am I reading this? Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Who's hearing this? Who's going to remember this? That is where it starts. The nervousness to actually speak in front of people. It's because of all of these experiences that we had mostly in classrooms, of not wanting to speak up, not wanting to raise your hand, even though you didn't hear the information, but you wanted to ensure that you didn't get made fun of or that anybody judged you. When I was doing this, a memory came out that in college, I had trouble spelling the word screw for some reason. The professor in class literally called that out and said, gosh, if we don't even know how to spell screw, we are in big trouble. That was mortifying. It was humiliating. And I for sure know that I very much used that, and I didn't necessarily reach out for help as much as I needed to or wanted to. All right, I've put in that these are triggering tips. Why? Because a lot of these things, like my eyes just caught let it go, and I'm still getting triggered. It's because we're hearing these things and they don't necessarily resonate, or they don't make sense, or they're just being told to us, like you should already know how to do these things. But these aren't just an inherent skills. Some people are naturally more inclined to be more comfortable in front of people and talking, but mostly not everyone else. Some helpful tips that I use is moving your body. Energy gets stuck in your body. As you can see, I have to move around. It's very difficult for me in general just to sit, but I know by moving, I'm at least changing and moving out the energy. You don't need to do this now, but one of my favorite things out of this Tony Robbins podcast was called the cape walk. And you literally get up and you walk around. I encourage you, if you are able to or want to, give it a go. Stand up if you're able, or if you're sitting, pull your shoulders back and pretend like you have a very heavy cloak and cape behind you. Really feel what that's like. And if you have the ability to walk around, just notice how different that you feel holding this cape up. Well, that's holding your body in a confident way. That is changing the physiology of your body to tell your brain, hey, I'm okay. I'm not in danger. I'm actually feeling really good. Not speaking. Yes, I'm so happy. Thank you, Annalie. It really is great. It's a great exercise to do. Not speaking with hesitation. We had a question. What do you say when you likes, ums? I had a different teacher in high school that literally counted how many times this one individual said like. It was an astronomical amount, and it was an English teacher. Being aware of this, the reason why we tend to lean on these filler words like, and it's that overthinking in your head. It's trying to think of what you're going to say next and needing to buy yourself a little time. I find when I changed from saying which I did used to have in my speaking whatnot, I'm getting in my head. So example, I'm now overthinking what I'm just saying because I don't feel like it was super clear and crisp. It happens. What you can do is it's actually better to take a pause as opposed to using filler words because you're still thinking about those. When you say things like, I just don't feel like I have the confidence, or I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I think it's the worst is going to happen. Well, it's going to. If you have the mindset of the worst is going to happen, 100% of the time, you're going to be looking and finding that. It truly is changing. And it's, again, something that going from how you feel now to I'm confident in everything I do, that could be a really huge jump. So what is a micro step in between that is believable for you? You're truly trying to change your core beliefs. You're controlling this mental focus. And what you focus on determines how you feel. With mindfulness, now this is a very, very triggering concept, especially in the neurodivergent community, because a lot of times we hear, well, you just need to meditate. It's kind of like, oh, just go write it in a journal. Well, that doesn't give a lot of structure. So there's a lot of frustrating here. And the biggest thing that I got from it was when I was originally getting into mindfulness and meditation, I had a wonderful mentor who said, well, Taylor, if you didn't have any thoughts, you'd be dead. And I said, that's fair. It's a fair statement. It's not about getting rid of your thoughts. That's not going to happen, especially if you have 4 or 5 thought streams constantly. What it is allowing that turning down of the music on those thoughts in general and finding a middle point. And why that's so important is that it's about being kind to yourself. If you're able to really take some moments and focus in on one thing when you are just out and about in your day, it gives you a better chance of hearing some negative thoughts that could be happening, and to be able to recognize, like, wow, I'm being a jerk to myself right now. One of my favorite quotes is, talk to yourself like you would a good friend. I heard that and I said, I would never talk to someone the way I was talking to myself, especially wrapped around mistakes, rumination, and performance anxiety. The being too hard on yourself. Let it go. Oh, that one still gets me, I will say, because it really is, it's very abstract. What does it actually mean to let something go, especially when your brain is just on that wheel and caught and going and going and going? To me, I really do feel like it's just not allowing it to be the star of the show. It's allowing these other thoughts, and that's how you control your thoughts. I also find that slow down to speed up, to me, that really just at first did not make sense. What is that? How does that even work? But when I, for example, a couple times a day, I went outside, I took some deep breaths and I said, this is a moment we need, because we're just going to keep going and overthinking. Not going to go through all these. These were just a list that were really, really helpful for me. We got a lot of questions of actual resources to use. And I will also not read this, and apologies for it being aggressive on this slide, but these are all quotes through my healing journey in life that have really resonated with me. So we will be able to send this out, hopefully, and I'll also be posting these in the myriad of places. So favorite thing, oh, such a bummer that the image doesn't come up for you. It's the, I don't know if you've seen the movie Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell, and he's a NASCAR racer, and he's trying to give a thank you speech, and he literally, his hands, when he's speaking, just kind of come up. And he very much doesn't know what to do with his hands. I feel like that so much in life, not just with speeches and giving. So truly, what do you do, especially virtually? Well, when you're not talking with your hands, like I tend to do, I have all the things. I have all the things in front of me, because what I like to do is getting out that energy. Someone else said, I've been told that holding something in your hands helps present and focus. And what I find is it's clogging the system, because you're doing multiple things now for you to be able to focus. What can you do not to get your blood pressure going? Ooh, Sonia, I would also love to know that. That is truly part of that survival mode. It's really just changing. I'm noticing that my blood pressure is going up. All right. That means I could take a deep breath. I could go for a walk. I could go do something else. I very much think holding something is very helpful. It's different being in person. Mind you, I haven't spoken in person since college. So what they have done is holding like a paperclip or something small. Fidget toys, absolutely for the win. And I mean, like, how can you not? It's adorable. It's great. Oh, just had to click the screen. Perfection. Oh my God. Just gets me every time. Find the humor in things is also a great tip. Some other questions that came in that I wanted to talk through is about that rumination. And let's talk about it. And I have some great examples that I realized I didn't even get to talk about. So curious on rumination, not reading into others' reactions during a presentation, that overthinking is a killer, especially when it comes to other people and we'll never know what they think, but I still stress over it. That's the hardest part for me. Yes, Rowan, this is everything. That overthinking is a killer because now you're just thinking about what others are thinking as opposed to actually delivering the content or hoping in some way to get that feedback. I recently did my first full company presentation on pronouns and dead naming. I had over 600 people in attendance. It was incredible. I actually felt so proud of the way I presented and the content and everything that went into it. Guess what I still did? I still ruminated and found the things that I could have done better. It happens. It's asking yourself, why? Why do I feel this way? And then keep going in that because it generally will tell you something that you can work on. Now, question for you, my another rumination. I got you, QQ, on those pronouns. Toilet paper. Go with me on this. Over or under? Let's see it in the chat. I will not judge you for choosing the one that I do feel like if you would be an alien. Thank you. Thank you. I will see the brave soul to go under. That's totally fine. Annalie, I knew it.
Taylor, I didn't even know this was a preference until I had a roommate that scolded me like, this should never be under. So, I mean, now my default is over because I just remember this old roommate telling me like, this could not be like.
I love that. I love that so much. Yes. Thank you. I agree for over, but to each their own. I bring this up in college. We did this debate, random topics. And I believe I had to do under for toilet paper versus my opponent who got over. They crushed it. They absolutely, that was easier for them, but they did such a great job. And then it was my turn and it was terrifying. And I was jittery and spotty and I definitely spoke too fast and I didn't speak long enough because I was more focused on what everyone else was thinking about it than me actually trying to practice. Acceptance for these thoughts. They're going to happen. You're gonna make a mistake. And as opposed to fighting and giving resistance against it, it's okay. What can I learn from this? How can I get better and improve? All right, we're getting into the Q&A. This is definitely a fear that comes up is, oh gosh, what if somebody asks me something that I don't know the answer to? Well, I had to keep saying, well, I know this content. This is something that I am very passionate about, but it always comes with the time of maybe I don't know something. And when I was thinking about it, the idea of, oh, wow, gosh, that's a really great question. I'm going to noodle on it for a bit and I'm going to follow up. I'm going to post it to social. It's just recognizing that you're not always going to have all the answers, and that's okay. Because if we expect everyone to have all of the answers, there's not really much for us to learn and grow as well. And Amelia, we'll get back to this question. This was just a very big point that I wanted to hit, and I'm so appreciative of the individuals who put in for this, of non-English speakers, because I have an incredible amount of empathy. Why? We're very US-centric here. And we definitely take for granted that most of the world is able to speak English. Here's some thoughts that came up for me was truly giving yourself grace, because you're literally not speaking your native language, even if you are the most proficient. Heck, I struggle with English. It is a very complicated language. Being aware of your speed and recognizing that not everyone is going to be able to fully understand you. With the way my brain is wired, I do struggle with really, really thick accents. I generally have to look at the person in the mouth. And if it's on the phone or just not able to see it, I prefer trying to find some kind of captions if that is also an issue. And it's just being vulnerable. It's coming on just like I did and said, wow, you know what, I am nervous. Or wow, English is not my first language. It's letting other people know that, yep, this is not the easiest thing for you to do. And the advice for the first one, and this is really what kicked out for all of this, and apologize. Anything with appendages is quite ableist language. So what really launched this entire session was my previous Power to Fly session on mental health in the workplace. And I had a full-blown anxiety rage attack right before. Given I did lock myself out of my house an hour before the presentation, and there was other things that happened. But I also experienced borderline personality disorder. It was actually because of that session that I figured out something just feels bigger. Something feels bigger with my emotions that I'm not actually able to control. And I had an anxiety attack, and I had to do some very screaming, yelling. I had a sore voice for that session, and I was damaging my body by keeping all of this stress in. So some things that I would have liked to said to myself, and now I say on myself, is first off, don't assume the worst, because that is you choosing. Please breathe and focus on the what, not the how, that we have more opportunities to improve. We're not going to get it absolutely perfect in the first go. This is us literally learning how to do this. And I love you, and you are a rock star. Super appreciate going through that content. I know we have a ton more questions, so let's get to it.
Well, Taylor, we are celebrating you today. Thank you so much for guiding us so gracefully through this presentation. Yes, spirit fingers all around, digital confetti, it's happening. Really, it's interesting just to see how we're getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable these days. And I applaud everyone, because it's not easy. I decided to study the performance arts and theater. So there was a moment I said, this is what I'm getting into. So I actually, I see that it's, and some of the things that you were saying are some of the things that I was taught actually in this profession. You wouldn't say all these things to someone you love. Why are you saying all these things to yourself? And that immediately helped. And I hope that, if people take, little bits away in this moment and they can rewatch this, like take that away. It really helped me as well to, reflect on, would you say the things that you're saying to yourself to someone that you care about? And hopefully you wouldn't. And so why would you say it to yourself? So I love this, empathy first within yourself, that self-awareness, and then seeing what that can do as you're presenting on a topic. I also want to banish the word expert, because a lot of things that you're saying is like, I love speaking about all the ways that we can decolonize all of the things. Language is one of them, just the way that we've been taught so many things. A lot of examples you gave started in school, and it just causes so much trauma with you're expected to be perfect. What does perfect mean? Just banish that as well. So, being mindful of our language and inviting people on this journey with us. We were on this journey with you, Taylor. So thank you for showing us how to do this so gracefully. We do have a couple minutes left. So you did touch on so many questions that were previously submitted, but there were some questions that came up in the chat that I want to highlight just to see what you have to say about this. So I know that now that we're moving into this virtual, a lot of us are moving into this virtual world where we do have to speak or present and try to practice empathy and try to practice, creating belonging in the digital space. How do we do that? People have to go through interviews and show their best selves to try to get a job. It's like something that we talk about here a lot with Power to Fly. So Rizlin writes, my challenge is that I'm pregnant and during interviews, I will sweat even if I'm not necessarily nervous. This is obviously a physiological symptom that I can't really help. Any tips on how to manage this gracefully? And just to piggyback on that question, is there anything that people can say just from the jump for whatever their situation is? If they know that, let's say English isn't their first language, or they know that they have some sort of physical things happening, or, they were locked out of their house an hour before and they're kind of, stressing out. Is there just something that people can say? I know that people are bringing in access needs, to just start off and, calm the water so that relieves tension and then also sets the next session up for success so that takes pressure off of the speaker and also takes judgment out of the people who might be listening. So what do you have to say about that, Taylor?
Yeah, 100%. It's truly first. And as you said, if you're not being compassionate with yourself first, you're doing it wrong. You don't do a lot of things wrong in that sense. And what's one thing about being compassionate is advocating for yourself in those experiences. So it's better for you in the long run to say, as I now do with any kind of interviews or conversation, very front forward with being experienced ADHD and being on the spectrum. I need to hear those questions ahead of time because I need time to process them so that I'm not doing what I did today and trying to come up with the exact content on the spot. If you are having the physiological symptoms, it's really, I find a lot of times you're the one who's paying more attention to those than other people. And that's really difficult to get out. But even just saying it, starting off, and like you said, it's like, right, starting off and saying, English is not my first language. I have I used to old programming. If I had to ask a second time for what somebody said, whether it be I didn't hear it or I just wasn't, dialed in. If I had to ask more than the second time, like if I didn't understand it after the first, oh my gosh, I would have never asked again, because either I feel like that person's either think I'm not listening or that I might feel dumb for not truly understanding it. And that's where like I didn't raise my hand in school because I was so embarrassed, but that's a disservice to myself because I'm not getting what I need out of that interaction.
Yes, I love that. And again, some of your references are going back to school. And, I don't know if there are any educators on the line, but, let's try to rethink some of these things so that we're not left with years and years of trauma and having to, figure out how to undo all the things that we were, that we kept inside. I definitely feel you because, you're not alone there. So yeah, Carrie writes, school is a great source of trauma for many of us, indeed. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I would love to move on to, let's see, so many questions that I can choose. Taylor, did you see something that pops out to you?
The one was just like, what do you do about dry mouth? Because I was like, oh my gosh, that is literally hashtag same. I do find that hot water helps with it, but it's also being okay with pausing and taking a sip, because if I don't, I'm just going to now focus on the dry mouth as opposed to what I'm saying. So really it's just, again, it's putting your needs first before caring about what comes out.
I love that. And I'm a huge advocate for connecting the mind and the body. So a lot of things that you're saying in this past hour is like, don't obsess with your thoughts, get out of your head, of course, trust in yourself. And some of the tips that you're bringing up is, to get into your body, to activate your body, to hold something, move something, have the water next to you, have the tea or something next to you. And I know we're banishing the word normal as well, but to normalize that, it's like, so that we're not just speaking so fast all the time and everyone is in the, madness of the mind and thoughts and words. It's like, let's make, pausing and breathing a part of this work that we're doing, especially now that we're in these squares and we're asked to, we have legs, some of us who have legs, and shake them and move them, or, put on that cape that you said and just pull your
Oh my
shoulders back.
gosh.
You're able to do that. I found that brought humor in the moment immediately. So whether that made me feel like I was more confident or, kind of more funny, it just like lightened it up automatically. So I really appreciate these tips that you're giving. Someone wrote, Carrie wrote, there's nothing wrong with pausing for a drink of water. Absolutely. And actually I find that is like, it's contagious. When I saw you drinking water, I got water, and it's just like, okay, cool. Let's keep our water.
On that note, there are some individuals who are very affected by sound. So it's being mindful of those. If I would never eat in front of like an actual public speaking thing, but if I'm just on a call and just on a meeting, it's just being mindful and understanding that you're not the only one in this interaction.
Yes. And it's making this, the whole experience human centered, which is what I love the most about, the core of what your message is today, is that we're all human. We're all going to, we're messy. So bring the mess and ask for, that transparency and vulnerability in the mess. And of course, to continue to learn with each other as we're shape shifting into what's next and, unlearning all of the things that we're asked to unlearn in order to be our best selves. So thank you so much, Taylor. We are at our time. So you've already dropped so much knowledge. Can you just remind folks how they can connect with you when we finish this conversation, and then leave us with some food for thought? You've said so much in this hour. I've got the sun now just shining here. I'm going to open the windows. I'm going to go out to the forest to take a walk. But if there's anything, one thing that you want us to remember out of all of the things, we're going to rewatch this, of course, and send it along to our community. But food for thought just to end this session.
Absolutely. You can find me. I have two TikTok accounts, Thrive Not Survive 555 and Tailored Vibes 999. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, just my name, Taylor Bikowski. Please connect with me. I'd love to continue the conversation. And I think food for thought, which is so funny because we are speaking about water and food here. It truly is, mistakes are going to happen. It is how you talk to yourself when those come up that is important. Be kind to your mind, and practice is progress.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Taylor. Good luck with all of the beautiful things that you're working on. Thank you again for sharing time and sharing knowledge with us today. And good luck, everyone. Hopefully the ones that still keep their toilet paper going down, keep doing that. Don't put it over, because we need the ones here who are shaking up the scene, even when it comes to toilet tissue. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you again, Taylor. See you soon.
Thank you all so much.